Let me ask you something honest. Think about the last time you were really into a woman. I mean, genuinely interested. You thought about her more than you should have. You changed small things about yourself to impress her. Maybe how you dressed, what you said, how often you texted back. You showed up. You were consistent. You were available. You did everything right by your own logic, by the logic society handed you, since you were old enough to understand what attraction was. And she pulled away. Maybe slowly, maybe suddenly, but she pulled away, and you were left there replaying every conversation, every moment, trying to figure out what you did wrong, because from your side of it, you did everything right. You were kind. You were attentive. You were there. Here's what nobody is going to tell you in a pop song, in a romantic comedy, or in the advice your mother gave you when you were 14 years old. The reason she pulled away had nothing to do with your looks. It had nothing to do with your money, your height, or your social status at that moment in time. The reason she lost interest is something so deeply counterintuitive, so backwards from what most men believe, that when I explain it to you today, part of you is going to resist it. Because it's going to challenge a story you've been telling yourself your entire adult life. The biggest mistake men make with women is not what they do. It's what they stop doing the moment a woman enters the picture. Stay with me, because everything I'm about to say builds on that one idea. And by the end of this, you will never look at attraction, confidence, or your own behavior the same way again. There's a man I want you to picture. Call him Marcus. 28 years old, decent looking, has a good job, smart, genuinely funny when he's relaxed. His friends think he's solid. He's the kind of guy who holds it together in every area of his life, except one. The moment Marcus meets a woman he's truly interested in, something shifts. It happens so subtly that he doesn't even notice it at first. He starts checking his phone more. He adjusts his plans to be available when she might be free. He measures every text message before he sends it, not to say what he actually means, but to say what he thinks she wants to hear. He starts filtering himself, shrinking himself, rearranging himself, and women can feel it, not because women have some supernatural ability, not because they're calculating or cruel, but because human beings, all human beings, are exquisitely sensitive to authenticity. We have millions of years of social evolution hardwired into us. And one of the things that wiring detects almost immediately is when someone is performing rather than being. Marcus doesn't realize he's performing. He thinks he's trying. He thinks he's being a good man. He's been told that effort equals love, that showing up equals attraction, that consistency equals desire. But here's what Marcus is actually communicating with every one of those adjusted behaviors. He's saying, "You are more important than I am." He's saying, "My time, my plans, my personality, all of these are negotiable, depending on what you want." He's saying, "I don't fully trust my own value, so I need you to confirm it for me." And women, no matter how much they might consciously appreciate the effort, are not attracted to that energy. Not because they're shallow, but because attraction doesn't respond to logic. Attraction responds to signals. And the signals Marcus is sending say one thing clearly: I am not in charge of my own life. Let me slow down here and talk about something most men have completely backwards. There is a widespread belief that attraction works like a transaction. You put in enough effort, enough kindness, enough availability, and eventually, she'll feel what you want her to feel. You've heard it your whole life. Just be yourself. Treat her well, and she'll come around. Show her how serious you are. That belief system is responsible for more confusion, more heartbreak, and more wasted years than almost anything else in a man's life. Because attraction is not a transaction. Attraction is not a reward for good behavior. Attraction is a biological, emotional response, and it is triggered by very specific things. Let me tell you about a shift I want you to consider. Not a technique, not a strategy, a genuine identity level shift. Most men approach women from a mindset of scarcity. Whether they realize it or not, they're operating from a belief that says, attractive women are rare. Opportunities like this don't come often. I need to make this work. I need to not mess this up. And that scarcity mindset, that underlying fear of losing something you haven't even won yet, is written all over your behavior. She can read it even if she can't name it. The shift is this. Stop approaching women as opportunities and start approaching them as possibilities. An opportunity is something you can't afford to lose. Something precious and scarce that requires you to be careful, to manage it, to not say the wrong thing. An opportunity puts her above you from the start. A possibility is different. A possibility is, this could be interesting or it couldn't. Let's find out. You're not begging it to be what you want it to be. You're not managing her perception of you. You're just showing up as yourself and seeing what happens. And if it doesn't work out, another possibility will come along, because you are a man in motion, building something, living fully, and your life doesn't depend on this one interaction. That mindset shift alone will change the way you carry yourself. It will change the way you speak. It will change what you're willing to say and what you're willing to walk away from. And she will feel all of it without you ever having to say a word about it. Now, I want to get into something that sits underneath all of this, because neediness, people-pleasing, validation-seeking, these don't come from nowhere. They have a root. And if you don't deal with the root, you can learn all the surface-level behaviors in the world and still not fix the actual problem. The root is this. Most men have never sat down and decided who they are. That sounds simple, maybe even insulting, but I mean it very specifically. Most men live their lives in reaction. They respond to what their environment, their family, their culture, their social media feed tells them they should be. They absorb the expectations of everyone around them and build an identity out of compliance. And a man who is built from compliance, from what others expect of him, will always be seeking approval from others to feel okay, because the version of him that exists only works if people keep validating it. A man who has decided who he is, who has done the internal work of building a genuine identity, a set of real values, a clear direction. That man is not looking for approval from anyone. He might want it sometimes. He might enjoy it, but he doesn't need it. And women feel that independence at a cellular level. So the question I want to put to you right now is genuinely important, not rhetorical, not motivational fluff. I want you to actually sit with this. Who are you when there's no woman involved? When there's no audience? When there's nothing to prove to anyone? What do you actually believe? What do you actually enjoy? What are you actually building? What makes you feel genuinely proud when you close your eyes at night? If you struggled to answer any of those questions, if you hesitated, or if the answer involved another person's opinion of you, then we have found the real work. And that work is far more important than any dating strategy, any conversation technique, any piece of advice about what to text or when to call. Here's where men go wrong most brutally. And this one's going to sting a little. The biggest mistake is not making themselves too available. It's not texting too much. It's not being too nice. Those are symptoms. The real mistake, the one that runs underneath all of them, is that most men abandon themselves the moment attraction appears. Let me explain what I mean by that. Before the woman, you had things. You had a routine, a purpose, maybe a business you were building, or a skill you were developing. You had standards for your time. You had things you enjoyed doing on your own. Lifting, reading, traveling, creating. You had opinions that were genuinely yours. You had boundaries you developed through experience, things you wouldn't tolerate, values you'd stand by. And then she came along, and piece by piece, quietly, almost unconsciously, you started trading those things. Not all at once, but a little here, a little there. You skipped the gym because she wanted to hang out. You agreed with something you didn't actually believe because the argument didn't feel worth it. You stopped talking about your goals as much because you wanted to seem present, not obsessive. You rearranged your entire schedule to fit her availability. Every single one of those trades felt like sacrifice in the moment, and sacrifice feels noble. It feels like love. But to her, every one of those trades, let's talk about standards, because this connects to everything I've been saying, and most men have a badly distorted understanding of what standards actually are. Most men think that having standards means being picky about who you date, checking boxes, looks, career, personality. That's part of it, but that's the shallow version. Real standards are about behavior, not hers, yours. Real standards are the invisible lines that define what you will and won't accept in terms of how you're treated. They define when you lean in and when you step back. They define when you give second chances and when you walk away. And critically, they define what you require from yourself before you bring a woman into your life. A man without standards is a man who can be moved in any direction. And while that might seem agreeable and flexible, it actually communicates one of the most unattractive things a man can communicate: that he has no center of gravity. A man with standards, even unspoken ones, has weight to him. You can feel when you're in his presence that there are things he won't compromise on, and that weight is not threatening to a good woman. It's reassuring. It tells her she's dealing with someone real, someone who will hold the relationship to a standard that keeps it healthy, because he holds himself to that same standard first. Standards also protect you from something insidious that men rarely talk about: the slow erosion of self-respect. Every time you accept behavior you told yourself you wouldn't accept, you take a small hit. Every time you stay in a dynamic that drains you because you're afraid that if you leave nothing better will come, you take another hit. Stack enough of those hits together, and you end up as the man who looks in the mirror and doesn't fully recognize who's looking back. Protecting your standards isn't selfishness. It's the maintenance of the very thing that makes you worth choosing. Here's an insight that most men never reach because they get too caught up in the tactics. The work you do on yourself, the real work, the unglamorous, daily, relentless work of becoming better, is the most attractive thing you can do. Not because it makes you more impressive, but because it makes you more whole. And wholeness is magnetic. I'm talking about the discipline of waking up early and doing the thing you said you were going to do, even when you don't feel like it. The discipline of keeping your word to yourself, not just to others. The practice of sitting with discomfort without reaching for distraction. Not scrolling, not binging, not numbing, but actually being with it and working through it. I'm talking about building financial stability. Not so you can impress someone, but because financial chaos creates emotional chaos, and emotional chaos makes you reactive and anxious and easy to destabilize. I'm talking about building a body you respect. Not the body of a magazine cover, but a body you earned through discipline that tells you every morning when you look in the mirror that you are someone who follows through. None of this is done for women. That's the point. It's done for you because a man who is building himself is living in forward motion. And forward motion creates a kind of gravity. People are drawn to it without being able to explain exactly why. And here's the interesting thing about that kind of man. Women show up in his life differently. They meet him at a different level. Because a man who is that deeply invested in his own development communicates, without a word, that he expects the person beside him to be equally committed to their own. And the women who are comfortable with that, who rise to that, are exactly the kind of women worth having. I want to address something that's probably come up for some of you while listening to this. You might be thinking, this sounds like I should just be cold, like I should withhold affection, act like I don't care, play games. This sounds like you're telling me to be emotionally unavailable. That is the exact opposite of what I'm saying. There is a profound difference between a man who doesn't care and a man who is grounded enough not to need your constant reassurance. One is damaged. The other is powerful. A grounded man can be deeply warm. He can be generous, affectionate, fully present in a relationship. He can tell a woman she's beautiful. He can invest in her. He can be emotionally open when the time and the relationship earn that openness. What he doesn't do is attach his self-worth to her response. He doesn't become a different person based on her mood. He doesn't make her approval the weather that determines how his day goes. He offers warmth from a place of abundance because he has genuine self-respect, genuine direction, genuine inner wealth, not from a place of emotional hunger. That distinction changes everything, because a warm man with a core is the most disarming combination there is. He's safe enough to open up to, and strong enough that opening up to him doesn't feel like a risk. That's what women mean when they say they want a man they can trust. Not just trustworthy in the faithful sense, trustworthy in the sense that he will still be himself when things get hard, that he won't collapse under pressure, that he won't shift who he is every time the wind changes. The man who folds doesn't fail because he was kind. He fails because he communicated that his identity is externally dependent. And a woman cannot feel truly safe with a man whose sense of self can be disrupted by her mood. This is why emotional stability, the ability to regulate yourself, to not be hijacked by anxiety or insecurity, to respond rather than react, is one of the most attractive things a man can develop. It's not exciting in the way that status or looks are exciting, but it creates a depth of attraction that goes far beyond the surface, the kind that builds over time instead of fading. Now, I want to spend a moment on something that might challenge some of you in a different way. We've been talking about men who are too available, too agreeable, too focused on external validation. But there's another version of this mistake that goes in the opposite direction. Men who confuse coldness with strength. Men who think that being emotionally withholding, unreliable, or consistently unavailable is what creates attraction. It does, sometimes in the short term, for certain women, under certain circumstances. But that dynamic is not about strength. It's about insecurity wearing a mask. A man who is genuinely cold and withholding is not grounded. He's defended. He's built walls because he's afraid. He creates drama because the intensity of drama feels like passion to him. He keeps women emotionally destabilized because a destabilized woman isn't able to evaluate him clearly. That is manipulation, and while it might produce short-term results, it creates a particular kind of relationship, toxic, exhausting, addictive in the worst way. It attracts women who confuse chaos for love, and it repels the kind of women who would actually make your life better. The goal is not to be hard to read. The goal is to be genuinely full, to be a man who is so invested in his own integrity, his own growth, his own purpose, that he doesn't need to manufacture distance or drama to seem interesting. He's interesting because he's real. That distinction between performative aloofness and genuine groundedness is everything. Let me bring this to something practical, because I know what it feels like to hear all of this and think, okay, but what do I actually do differently tomorrow? Here is the real work. The first thing is to reconnect with your own life, fully, completely, without apology. That means whatever you've been putting on hold, whatever you've been deprioritizing, whatever version of yourself you had before the last relationship or the last woman you were chasing, go back to that. Get back in the gym. Pick up the project you dropped. Call the friends you stopped calling. Get back to building the thing you said you were going to build, not as a strategy, not to seem more attractive. Do it because your life belongs to you, and you owe it to yourself to live it fully. The second thing is to get ruthlessly honest about your neediness, not to shame yourself, but to understand where it comes from. For most men, the need for external validation from women traces back to something much older, a need for approval that was never fully met, wounds that got layered over with adult behavior but never actually healed. Understanding that doesn't fix it overnight, but it changes your relationship to it. Instead of acting out of that need unconsciously, texting too much, chasing, people-pleasing, you start to notice it. You start to say, "Ah, there it is again," and you make a different choice. The third thing is to build a genuine vision for your life. Not a list of goals, a vision, a picture of the man you're becoming and the life you're constructing. Specific enough to feel real, ambitious enough to demand something from you every day. Because a man with a clear direction is never desperate. He has somewhere to be, and that somewhere is always more compelling to the right woman than anything you could say or do in a single interaction. The fourth thing, and this is the one most men skip entirely, is to raise your standards for how you allow people to treat you. Not just women, everyone, your friends, your family, your employers, the people in your life who take more than they give. Practicing the discipline of self-respect in every relationship makes it natural in romantic ones. I want to come back to Marcus one final time. A year after that confusing rejection, Marcus made a decision. Not about women, about himself. He decided to stop building his life around the possibility of love and start building it around the reality of his own purpose. He went back to the business plan he'd been putting off. He restructured his mornings around discipline, training, reading, working on his goals before the world had a chance to derail him. He said no to plans that didn't serve him. He rediscovered opinions he'd suppressed. He started feeling, for the first time in a long time, like he was in his own corner. And something strange happened. The way it always does when a man genuinely comes back to himself. He stopped thinking about women constantly, not because he stopped wanting connection, but because he was finally full enough in his own life that he wasn't starving for it. He stopped overanalyzing every interaction. He stopped performing. He just showed up as himself, the real version, not the edited one. And he found that the conversations were easier, the connections more natural, the attraction more mutual. The women who came into his life during that period were different too, because he was different. When you operate from wholeness, you attract people who resonate with wholeness. When you operate from need, you tend to attract people who are comfortable with that dynamic, and that is almost never good for either person. Marcus didn't crack some secret code. He didn't learn magic words or a strategy for manipulation. He just stopped abandoning himself. And in doing so, he became the kind of man other people want to be around. Genuinely, not artificially. Here's the truth I want to leave you with. And I want you to hear this not as motivation, but as fact. The biggest mistake men make with women is not a dating mistake. It is a self-abandonment mistake. It is the mistake of treating a woman's opinion of you as more important than your own, of treating her comfort as more valuable than your integrity, of treating the fear of losing her approval as a more powerful force than the commitment you made to building something real with your life. Every behavior we've talked about today, the neediness, the people-pleasing, the over-availability, the identity erosion, every single one of them flows from one source. A man who has not yet decided that he is worth choosing, with or without her validation. And here's the thing about that decision. It cannot be given to you. Not by this video. Not by any woman who tells you you're great. Not by any number of compliments or achievements. It has to be built, earned, through the thousands of small moments where you chose yourself, where you kept your word to yourself, held your standard, stayed in the discomfort, did the work when no one was watching. That man, the man built through those moments, does not struggle with the biggest mistake. Not because he figured out women, but because he figured out himself. And a man who knows himself does not give that self away for anyone. You are not in this world to arrange yourself around someone else's approval. You are here to build something, to become something, to leave a mark that has your name on it. Master yourself first. Build the life Hold the standard. Everything else, the right woman, the respect, the relationship worth having, follows from that. It always does. That's Prime Within. I'll see you in the next one. Ryan Holiday calls this the return. Not the perfection, the return. The practice of coming back to yourself, to your standards, to your commitments, with less drama and less self-punishment each time. Because self-punishment is its own form of indulgence. It's just a negative one. It keeps you focused on yourself, on how you feel about having failed, instead of quietly returning to the work. The man who can return without fanfare, without excessive guilt, without needing to announce his recommitment to anyone, that man is building something that will outlast any temporary lapse. Let me bring this all together, because I want you to walk away from this with something real, not just inspiration that fades by tomorrow morning, but a genuine shift in how you understand what you're building and why it matters. Women do not respect disciplined men because discipline is impressive. They don't sit down and calculate. This man has good habits, therefore he scores high on the attractiveness scale. It doesn't work like that. It works at a completely different level. They respect disciplined men because disciplined men are safe, not physically safe. Although that matters too. Emotionally safe, psychologically safe. The safety of knowing that the man beside you is not going to be undone by the next difficulty that arrives. The safety of knowing that his love for you is a decision, not just a feeling, and that a man who makes decisions and keeps them will keep this one. The safety of knowing that you are with someone who is actively, daily, working to become better, which means the relationship has somewhere to go. It can grow, because he is growing. Holiday ends, discipline is destiny, with a line that I want to give you, because it is the clearest summary of everything I've said today. He writes that self-discipline is the most important thing you can develop, not because it makes you successful, but because it makes you free. Free from your worst impulses, free from the need for external validation, free from the anxiety of a life ungoverned, free to love fully, to build boldly, to show up as the best version of yourself. Not when you feel like it, but because it is who you have decided to be. That freedom, that internal sovereignty, is what she feels when she's in the room with a disciplined man. And it is why she respects him, why she trusts him, why the attraction she feels for him deepens over time instead of fading. So here's where I leave you. And I want you to hear this not as a challenge from the outside, but as a call from the best version of yourself. The version that already knows what needs to be done. You know the thing you've been putting off. The morning you keep saying you'll start. The goal you keep describing to people, but not building toward. The habit you know would change your life, but that you haven't committed to yet. That thing is not just a goal. It is a question your own life is asking you. Are you the man you say you are? Or are you the man your behavior says you are? Every day you answer that question, whether you mean to or not. Every morning the alarm goes off. Every moment, the choice appears between the easier path and the meaningful one. Every time you could keep your word to yourself or quietly break it. The man you become through those choices. That quiet, unglamorous, daily, private construction of character is the most attractive man you will ever be. Not because attractiveness is the point, but because attractiveness is the natural result of a man who respects himself enough to master himself. Ryan Holiday's work is a reminder that this is not new wisdom. This is ancient wisdom. Men have known for thousands of years that the battle that matters most is the one you fight within yourself every single morning. And every generation of men has had to rediscover it for themselves. You are discovering it right now. Do not waste the moment. Wake up tomorrow and choose the harder thing. Not for her, not for an audience, for the man you are capable of being. Because that man, the one built by discipline, by kept promises, by daily choices made when no one is watching, that man does not struggle to be respected. He simply is. That is Prime Within. I'll see you in the next one.